Hello everyone. I hope your day was super duper duper, okay? Let's get right into another chapter of the Florida Real Estate Broker's Guide. We are now on the 6th edition, so let's get right into it. Basically, Unit 6 is giving an overview of the real estate valuation. This chapter is dealing a lot with the appraisers, some of the things that they have to do in order to come up with that perfect appraisal that we need, or at least very close to it. So that's what it's looking at, the definition, defining what an appraisal is, the assignment of an appraisal. If you flip on over to your page 156, first of all, it starts defining the word the appraisal for you. It tells you uniform standard of professional appraisal practice defines appraisal as an opinion of value or the process of developing an opinion of value. And then right up underneath there, it tells you the purpose of an appraisal. The purpose of an appraisal is to determine the problem to be solved and the type of value to be estimated. An appraiser must properly identify the problems to be solved in order to determine the appropriate scope of work. Now, down below there, it talks about a subject that we have heard from another class. I won't mention the name of it. A lot of you guys already know about the comparative market analysis versus the appraisal. You recall in that other class that your comparative market analysis is not an appraisal. One of the main reasons why is because the steps that the appraiser goes through for an accurate, full appraisal, some of those steps you're not doing in the CMA anyhow. Over on page 157, broker's opinion, broker's price opinion versus the appraisal. The broker's price opinion is telling you it's a written opinion of the value of real property. Remember, your appraisal is actually developing the opinion. Down below, it tells you about the relationship between the licensed broker and the professional appraisers. Yes, we do work together. It tells you, therefore, licensed real estate brokers, sales associates can perform appraisals for compensation. They may not, however, represent themselves as certified or licensed appraisers unless they actually hold that certificate, okay? Over on the next page is talking about some more federal regulation guidelines concerning it. One that you've heard again in another class, federal related transaction, is any real estate related financial transaction that a federal financial institution regulates. And then they have some different financial institutions down there that actually use that. Over on page 159, they have the Appraisal Foundation. These are some of the boards that they have. The Appraisals Qualification Board, that particular board, AQB, they qualify for state licensing certification and recertification of the appraisal. And then the ASB, which is the Appraisal Standard Board, they set forth the rules for developing an appraisal and reporting its results. So they're the ones that's doing the interpreting and amending those USTAs. Okay, over on page 160, they're talking about some appraisal certifications and licensure. Basically going through here again, you could be a registered trainee appraiser, you could be a licensed appraiser, you can be a certified residential appraiser, or you can be a certified general appraiser. These are some of the different certifications that you can have in there. One of the tools that they actually use as well on page 161, three of those areas that they look at is your price, cost, and value. And all three of these are very important to that appraiser when they are trying to get that as close of an appraisal for you that you need for your property. And note the difference between the three of them. Cost is the total expenditure required to bring a new improvement into existing plus the cost of the land. Price refers to the amount of money actually paid in the transaction. Don't go fussing about how much you think it should be. Price is what you actually pay for that. And then value is influenced by the economic forces such as your supply and demand. Now, you also have different types of value down to the bottom. Here again, you've heard of these in another class. Assessed value, dealing with your property taxation. Your going concern value and income producing properties, what you're looking at there. On your next page, insurable value, that's for the insurance. Investment value, that's for your investment. Liquidation, bring at a force or rapid sales. Your salvage value is the amount at which a property improvement can be sold, okay? And so then over on the next page, you're looking at principles of value. What are some of the things that actually creates or have some effect on the principle of value? Well, there's two areas that you want to look at. In the gray box on 163, it tells you variables that influence supply, availability of skilled workers, construction loans, financing, availability of land and materials, or on the next page, variables that influence demand, price of your real estate, population number, income of consumers, availability of mortgage credit, consumer taste or preference. If you look at both of those groups, you can see how they actually will do that. Variables that influence demand. Sure it is. If the price of real estate is too high, well, then you probably won't have that high of a demand. So things like that will actually influence the different variables of it. And then they talk about them in detail, which you definitely want to make sure you take a read on. On page 167, now we're talking about some other things that the appraiser uses that will help them to determine that price. 167, in external economics and diseconomics, they definitely use those two different forces. Highest and best use, yes, principle of highest and best use state that the value of sites and properties are maximized when the real estate is used most efficiently. So when you are appraising, a certain, let's say it's a business, or you are appraising a rental property, they are going to take a look at that and they can get the highest and best use they can depending on that particular property being used at its maximum part that it possibly can be used at. Over on, and they talk about that in detail. Then if you go over to page 170, they look at the steps in the appraisal process. Here again, you are not seeing these steps when you're dealing with your CMA, okay? It tells you step 1, identify the problem to be solved, including, these are some of the things that they are looking at to identify. They're looking for the client, intent user, and use of the appraisal. The other step, determine the scope of work necessary to develop that credible appraisal. And step 3, develop the appraisal according to the scope of work. So these are the steps in which the appraisal process actually goes through. And they talk about them as well in detail from there. If you go on over on page 172, they're talking about some extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions necessary in the assignment. You can imagine, and it tells here really quickly, it says the appraiser considers any extraordinary assumption and any hypothetical conditions necessary in the assignment. If an appraiser cannot verify a certain condition that is critical to the valuation, but which the appraiser has a reasonable basis to accept as true, the condition is an extraordinary assumption. And you can imagine they probably have almost one of those in almost kind of like every other, at least, property that they are trying to appraise. So those are things that they definitely have to take into consideration to get to that appraisal price. On 173, land use regulation, economic supply and demand, and the market area trends. Yes, those are things that has to be taken into consideration also when they're doing that appraisal. Develop an opinion of the highest and best use of real estate. It tells you the highest and best use as through vacant and the highest and best use as an improved or identified. The comparable highest or best use as though vacant and improved should be same as the subject property's highest and best use. So here again, another thing they have to take into consideration. Down below, they're talking about collecting, verifying, and analyzing information necessary for a credible appraisal. You know that's very important, because if they don't have the right properties that they're absolutely using in that appraisal, you better believe it can certainly make that report not come out to be as it should be, okay? It also talks about the different types of reports on page 175. You have oral and written report, and the thing about it, it says here, to the extent possible and appropriate, oral appraisal reports must address the same matters as written appraisal reports, okay? USPA Standard Rules 2.2 requires at a minimum that oral and written appraisal reports contain basically some of the same things. They have the list here: not misleading, contains sufficient information to enable the intended user to understand the report. Here again, it doesn't matter if it's oral or written. These are things that are required here. And then the other report over on 172, you have appraisal report forms, the forms that they are actually put into. You have a form report, and it tells you that is a financial institution typically required standard form report. A standardized form provides a financial institution appraiser with a quick and efficient way to communicate their work. Review appraisers, loan officers can follow and verify the information in a form report easily, okay? So you can kind of imagine that report literally being very easily to read. If I'm sure all of you watching this little clip, you have seen an appraisal report, and it's very standardized how they have it. Yet on the other hand, you have a narrative report, and it tells you narrative report are written reports that do not use the standard form. So that's pretty much what you're looking at for chapter 6. Here again, these videos, use them for listening tools. I know a lot of times I'm reading directly out of the book. That's absolutely okay, because the purpose of your video is, let's just say if you're at lunch break and you can't get the book out to read it, click on the video and just let it go in, read. It will help you with your study, okay? We'll be back for another chapter soon.